Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Darcy Walker-Krause, the Executive Director of the Uplift Center for Grieving Children, we greet you with joy and happiness and regard for you spending the time with us tonight. We really are happy to be here with you to celebrate our 20th anniversary and speaking grief for 20 years. And it's probably very fitting that we're in a place where we're experiencing a level of grief that is unprecedented for the city, the state, and probably the country. And in honor of the children and the caregivers and the professionals that work in this space, we wanted to take time out tonight to note Children's Grief Awareness Day, but also to note the people that have come to us and have worked with us around their grief and loss for the last 20 years. Just to say a little bit about where we're at in our program, we're diligently working along with organizations and communities to meet the needs of the children and caregivers throughout the city, through crisis support, virtual support groups, education, and really focusing on our relationships with people and leaning into those relationships to provide opportunities for healing, not only for the people that we serve, but for us as well. As we move through these times, we are sharpening our focus on being more trauma-informed, but also being more trauma-informed with a lens that takes into consideration racial trauma. And with that, our attention to advocacy and social justice is in rare focus for us. And we continue with that spirit. As I said to begin, we're excited and honored to have us join us tonight. And I know there's a list of things that you could be doing, including resting, having dinner with people that you care about, watching your favorite TV show. But we want to thank you for being here, and we want to say, we see you, we hear you, and we're here for you. And just to speak to the honor of the families and children in this city, for many, you might not know that this city has some of the most courageous, smart, caring, loving, and committed youth and caregivers that I've seen anywhere in the country and probably in the world. And we honor them tonight again, and we're grateful for you being here with us. And the occasion really is to come together to look at what our challenges are in terms of grief, loss, and trauma in the city, but really celebrate our strengths and our abilities and look how we can continue to work together from 2020 on to help the healing in the city. With that in mind, I want to invite you to take care of yourself. If you need to go to the bathroom, get some water, stop watching for a second, we're going to invite you to do that. For those who don't have water, sometimes when you're talking about things that are stressful, you might need a little something to drink. But the bottom line is we want you to focus on taking care of yourself. We have two of our professionals from our staff waiting to take questions from you from the live chat. We will get to those questions, but let me give you a little bit about how we're going to proceed. We're going to go ahead and introduce, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Speaking Grief video, then we're going to introduce the panel, and then we're going to watch an actual video of a family here in the city of Philadelphia. And from there, the panelists will react to that video, as well as other questions that we're going to pose through the process. So I want you to, again, if you're on Facebook Live and you're on the live chat, please use the chat for comments. And then if you have questions, put them in the Q&A. Okay. One of the reasons we are also doing this event tonight is to showcase a documentary and website, and it's called speakinggrief.org. And we wanted to focus on that, one, because we have one of our families featured in it, but the larger issue is that we wanted to offer you something that's ready-made and ready to be able to use to give to people about speaking grief. We know that people on this call are probably carrying a lot of grief, helping people with a lot of grief, and want to be able to give you something that you can actually use just by clicking a button. Also in the chat, you're going to see some notes about emotional support and grief support. We have our Philly Hope line that's live tonight. So we have those numbers up. Those numbers will go in the chat. So we want you to pay attention to that as well. So again, if you have questions, type in the Q&A and then watch the chat for the other issues. And you can move forward, Catherine. And we're going to play this video. It's about 3 minutes or so. And then we're going to introduce the panel and then go into their responses on the video.
My brother.
My mother. My son. I've always been the type to not want to put a ripple into someone's day. If you're happy, be happy. Don't be sad because you see me sad. Because nothing that you can do can make me not sad.
It was just hard to know that these people aren't going to come back. Just thinking like, dang, I can only see your face in pictures now.
Parenting through grief. One of the hardest things in the world. I'm not sure how other moms take it when they lose a child while still having others to worry about. But I just began feeling like a half a mom. I tried to keep him as busy as possible. I didn't want him to be like me.
My mom doesn't show it very often, but I know when she's hurting. I know when she's sad. Sometimes I would cry myself, or sometimes I'll just say, like, I'm just let her get it out.
I've, over the years, tried to mask it as much as possible. Unfortunately, being as though it's just the two of us, he's learned that my lights are out, it's 10 o'clock in the morning, mom's not having a good day. So he sees it, and then he'll check on me every hour on the hour. You okay? You need something? Did you eat? I'm gonna make you food. Even though it is 5 years later, I feel like I'm still early on in the grieving process because I still have a lot of days where I just don't want to be around anyone. Stephen Michael, whenever he wants to be my friend, I have a whole bin of board games. Like, all right, I got to get out of this rut. Let's play a game. Let's watch a movie. Let's do something together. Just trying to keep distracted, to keep my mind from wandering.
Grief never goes away. For me, it hasn't gone away in the 5 years because I loved him so dearly, and it just stays. I'm going to have to keep going through this throughout my whole life now. It never goes away.
It's just us against the world.
And as you can see, when we talk about courage, it's on full display. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce our panelists who will first respond to the video and then respond to the questions that we've prepared for tonight. Dr. Jamie Banks is currently the Deputy Chief of Prevention, Intervention, and Trauma at the School District of Philadelphia. In this position, Dr. Banks oversees the Office of Prevention and Intervention, where she has been working to further the district's implementation of trauma-informed practices and continuum of mental behavioral supports. Dr. Banks began her clinical training at the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, where she obtained a master's degree in clinical counseling. From there, she went on to obtain a doctorate degree in clinical psychology with a specialization in school psychology and a master's in business administration from Widener University. Dr. Banks has an extensive background and expertise in children's mental health and program development. She is passionate about the implementation and dissemination of necessary programming to ensure resiliency in children and youth. The programs that she has led focused on ensuring that children could optimize their opportunities to engage in a classroom, develop meaningful relationships with teachers and peers, and take those meaningful experiences into their homes to ensure that they were working towards bright and hopeful futures. I want you to give Dr. Banks a hand, a virtual hand, and then we will go through the other panelists, and then we'll respond to the video. Shantae Love. Shantae grew up in Abbotsford Projects, where most of her exposure of violence occurred. She is a survivor of incest and a witness to gang and domestic violence. This was the emergence of ultimate levels of trauma for her and her family. On March 26, 1997, Shantae's only brother, EMIR Peter Green, was shot 7 times in the back. This was a very trying time for Shantae's family. Having to deal with the tragedy of losing a brother was an experience she would not wish on anyone. When seeking help for their grief, they learned of many families experiencing the same pain. Seeing this, she, her mother Victoria, and sisters decided to start a nonprofit to help families impacted by homicides. They began their nonprofit of helping families in EMIR's old bedroom. During their early works to support families, they facilitated a drug-related homicide conference at Rosemont College and Temple University. At these conferences, they received resistance from some groups, feeling that victims were innocent victims and refused to participate. Shantae's mom retorted, "Every murder is real," realizing that her words she uttered were the acronym for her son's name, EMIR. Their nonprofit had a new name, EMIR, Every Murder is Real Healing Center. Every homicide impacts the family and deserves to be supported so they will be able to heal as a whole. Shantae is the program director of EMIR Healing Center. She has developed programs surrounding community crisis response and levels of healing from violence from an urban lens. She has also created models for schools to help with healing students and empowering educators after a murder occurs. Shantae's We Live project assists young adults to have voice and become peace ambassadors. Her models have healed families and communities by using her ability to uncover, heal, and prevent future trauma. This has led other agencies, ministries, schools, and hospitals to infuse her models in their work. These models focus on the strength of families and communities that infuse best practices to reestablish family and hope. Shantae is also the co-founder of Northwest Coalition to Promote Resilient Communities. Shantae was one of the partners to bring Ceasefire to Philadelphia. She coordinated the National Black on Black Violence Conference, and she is a member of Drexel's Injury Review Committee and the Philadelphia Coalition for Victim Advocacy. Shantae was also appointed by Governor Wolf to serve on the Pennsylvania Homicide Review Team. She is a member of the Pennsylvania Heal Pennsylvania team and a committee member of the Pennsylvania Racial and Communal Trauma Team. She is also part of the Coalition for Violence Intervention and Prevention, and works with the Philadelphia Community Violence Group. She holds a BA and an MHSA degree in Human Services from Lincoln University and is a certified crisis response trainer and restorative justice trainer. She's also a Christ servant minister for the Eastern Province of Pennsylvania, United Methodist Church, and she is an innovative leader in the community, healing grief and trauma, one family at a time. Crystal Wertham has a passion and genuine concern for others. This is evident in the work that she does as the Family Services Coordinator at Uplift Center for Grieving Children. Crystal has facilitated grief groups at CHOP CareBots Pediatric Center, CHOP South Philadelphia Primary Care, and other satellite locations in Philadelphia, where she works with both youth and caregivers after experiencing a significant death. She also continues working with Dr. Erwin Sandler, Dr. Charlene Wolchik, the team at Arizona State University and New York Life Foundation in the development and implementation of the Resilient Parenting for Bereaved Families program, formerly known as the Family Bereavement Program. Crystal credits her achievements to the strength and perseverance of the families she serves. From conducting intakes with new families to journeying with them in group, Crystal continues to be on the front line supporting communities one at a time. Teresa Mendes Quigley has worked at 3 healthcare facilities in Philadelphia, created innovative responses to health threats from environmental exposures, and served families as a bilingual Spanish-speaking social worker. She has mentored girls and youth and advocated on behalf of communities at various nonprofit organizations throughout the region. At Uplift Center for Grieving Children, Teresa serves as the Special Populations Coordinator, offering grief support services to immigrants, migrants, refugees, evacuees, and asylees. She's been at the Uplift Center since 2015, facilitating support groups with children, teens, and caregivers in schools and at 2 of our sites in Philadelphia. She has served as a field instructor of nursing, public health, and social work interns at Uplift and other organizations. Teresa is a product of the Philadelphia Public Schools, earned a Bachelor's of Social Work from Temple and a Master's of Social Work from Rutgers University. She has completed fellowships with the Environmental Leadership Program, the Hispanic Women's Leadership Institute, and NOAA Climate Stewards Education Project. She has presented at the International AIDS Conference in Montreal, at Greening Hospitals Conference throughout the country, and national public health conferences. She is the author of several articles on health and co-producer of several educational videos. Some of you may be thinking, why are we reading all of that? We're reading all of that because part of what we do is we honor people for who they are and what they're about. And we practice that not only with professionals, but we practice that with the people that we serve. So I want to go back to Dr. Banks, and I want you to just give some of your initial impressions about the Simmons family video and how this is connected to your work in the communities and schools.
Yes, seeing the video, I was just so touched, and know that is a story that I think we often see in the students that my teams work with in the city. Everything from just the dealing with the loss and how that is such a process, a long process. And then you see her son who is dealing with the loss himself, but also wants to take care of his parent, right? And feeling that. And then just him and the age he is and what else is going on in his life and just that weighing on him as well. I think about all the complex, just how complex the situation is and how the support that's needed is on so many sides and fronts. And it isn't like a one-man operation that can go in, right? And so it definitely resonated me with a lot of the stories that I've heard and my teams have heard and families that we've been trying to help, continue to try to help at the district.
Thank you. And I want our audience, as well as everyone who is out there listening, hang on to that complexity, because we'll get further into that as we go through the night. And Shantae Love. I want you to go ahead and respond to the video and connect it to your work.
Thank you, Kevin, and thank you, panelists, as we join in this journey together for the night. And my impression, just like the doctor stated, was it's all too many families. We see it on all different lenses and all different walks of life, this happening. And not only the pain, but understanding that the process it is to get to a healthy place is not a one-size-fits-all. And it's also a journey. It doesn't happen quick, because I think what happens, what people might not realize, is that when you lose somebody, that moving forward without them is a little bit different. It's a little bit different. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you. Crystal Wertham.
Good evening, everyone. It's such an honor to spend this evening with you. What stood out to me is when Stephen Michael, when he said, grief never goes away. It never goes away. And this is why I continue to work in the field of loss and grief. This is why I will continue to hold space for the youth and for caregivers who are grieving, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Teresa?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming together in this important night. And I also want to acknowledge the Simmons families for being so courageous to share their stories, right? Because that helps with the healing for others as well. I'm very moved by, here's a young child, and knowing the family, having known the family, I know that this happened years ago, like 5 years ago, right? So he said he knows when his mom is having a bad day, right? A hard time. A lot of times adults want to protect their kids, and that's what I see a lot, is that the adults want to make sure that the child can still play and do other things, but the kids know, they want to know that parent is going to be okay. I'm very moved by the video every time I see it. And it is what we say in group is that it could be lifelong, that there will be moments 20, 30 years down the line when we will think of the person and miss them.
Thank you. Thank you. It strikes me that we're all on a family and systems view, because oftentimes with children, people tend to think that it's an isolated issue just for them, but the things that are around them are very important, and the people that are around them for their support. With that in mind, we're going to jump into the next question. We're going to go back to Dr. Banks. Based on your experiences, professional and personal, what are some of the unique grief challenges, emotional, social, physical, cognitive, et cetera, that the children and caregivers in the city of Philadelphia face? And I'll say this part: I'm the person who has the least amount of Philadelphia experience. I've only been here since 2016. I think I'm the least experienced, but I'm always interested in what it is about Philly that people have to contend with and use to deal with their grief and loss. So Dr. Banks.
Yeah, I mean, in Philly, our families, I mean, they're doing so much. And so it's not like when a loss happens, the loss doesn't happen in isolation. There's still so many other things that are going on in their lives that they are trying to keep up with and do. And so what I find is it's sometimes difficult to think about needing help, right? It's sometimes difficult then to find that help or what help means. And then it might be difficult to allow yourself just that space or that you need that time. And so sometimes I see with our families, they just try to keep moving and going. And, you know, we're in the schools talking to them about what's going on. And that's when we find out what has happened, you know, within a meeting about something else. And we're like, oh, okay. And they're looking at us like, what? And we're like, no, like, that's big. That's big what you just shared. And then sometimes you'll see a relief in their face like, oh, that is big. I can breathe, right? So a lot of our families have dealt with so much and they continue to deal with so much and have to do so much that sometimes it's even like a recognition that this is loss, this is trauma. And as we've been in COVID, right, the definition of grief and loss, we've expanded that, right? And so trying to help our families and our students recognize that this is what is going on and allowing them to the space or finding the space to try to process or figure out what supports are needed.
Thank you. Shantae?
Also what I'm seeing in Philadelphia is what a lot of us don't talk about is that as people are going through grief, especially with the largest poverty level, is that just to handle everyday life is a challenge. So you don't have the time to grieve because you have to go to work. You have to go to work because you have to feed yourself. You're going to work and you're not making enough money to even stay like here. You're not, you're just like here. And so then you have this loss. And now you feel like you're drowning. Because then now you feel like you're drowning. And also if people of color, African descent, have a hard time reaching out for help. And that's because way back, if you did say you needed help, you were labeled as crazy. And if you're labeled as crazy, then you can't get help. And so you don't ask for help. And so, and you see that happening. COVID has changed the game in a huge way because us that do this work had to find a way that will give people the necessary tools to live and not touch them through a screen like this. I applaud all of my counselors and everyone that's in this type of work because we had to take a shift and we had to give it all we had because we had to figure out ways to do this type of work, which we know moving forward really does require human contact. When I say that is me looking you in your eyes, me offering a handout, your presence, because the energy is, you share energy that had to be different through a screen. And that when we're working with people, we're looking at their body language, whereas in the screen, everything is set up. So you set up here and you set up in front of the screen, and are you able to really release and unfold, which we know that is needed. I believe that a lot of us have done a great job at it right now. But I do believe that with poverty, and then you had the civil unrest of the visual part of seeing constant violence, our communities is what I tell people a lot. We're more like a war zone. Like young people are walking through the block, and the block is you can pick, it was a murder there, it was a shooting there, it was there. And so where is the space or the place of a happy place, of a place of hope, when they are seeing this type of devastation? And then the video, you see on social media, you see now crime is public. Where people used to call, say, "Oh my God, did you hear the shooting?" Now our young people are seeing it. They are visually seeing a murder, like visually seeing it, and those are the things that we contend with, and those are the things that in Philadelphia, and then you're looking at the racism that George Floyd has taken the look at racism and murder and relationships and people. We've had this one time to stand still and look at the ills of the world. And if you're standing still looking at the ills of the world, you're being infused with much more than we normally have. Thank
you, Shante. Crystal.
So Philadelphia is unique because it is a city of neighborhoods. There are families who never go from one section to another. So having supports within the communities is very crucial. And another challenge that I will speak to is that it's getting harder to wear your mask, kind of mask that grief that we were experiencing, which isn't a bad thing. It isn't a bad thing at all, but it can be very scary for someone who does not feel equipped to manage their grief and all that comes along with it. Pre-COVID, we had a number of distractions. The distractions were endless. We had our go-tos when we needed a break from the overwhelming thoughts and the feelings. But now we find ourselves with fewer distractions, fewer outlets, but even more stressors, which has caused an imbalance. The grief that we tried to hide, to protect ourselves, to protect others, we are now being forced to face head on. And it's coming out in our behaviors. It's coming out in thoughts and dreams, or should I say nightmares, because of the uncertainties and changes due to COVID, racialized trauma, homicides, gun violence, and of course the list goes on and on. But individuals are now struggling to meet their basic and psychological needs. And if you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, those basic and psychological needs must be met before one can achieve their full potential. So, and I believe that our society has unrealistic expectations of someone who is grieving. We expect them to take off from work or school, and that depends on the relationship that you had to the deceased. So we expect them to return after that time off, and return to their daily routines as if nothing ever happened. Sometimes they may get a year or until the next tragedy occurs. And if you are familiar, if you're watching the news, if you're in tune to social media, you see that there have been tragedies back to back with no time or very little time to breathe, to process, and to grieve before you're hit with yet another.
Thank you. Teresa?
So in Philadelphia, another thing that is pretty unique is that we have high numbers of new Philadelphians coming from all over the world, and some of them they all come for different reasons and with different abilities and different entry cards to the United States, and therefore some of them are able to access services and some are not. And so that is, you have a lot of new Philadelphians who are learning a new city, who come here and are hoping for a new life, and is not always the most welcoming place. We still expect people to come here knowing English, or we don't recognize the skill sets that they had. We have doctors working in factories, you have nurses, and you have all these intelligent, creative, and people who have so much to give, and we don't have an easy pathway for them. The other thing that's unique about Philadelphia is that we're such a large city with 1.5 million people, and we have one of the highest poverty rates in the country for a city this size. And so there are a lot of those stressors where people have been struggling and have been trying to make ends meet. But now with COVID, and then now they've, whether it's with COVID or another type of death, they are having less income in the home because maybe another adult is no longer bringing income in. And so we have a lot of families that are working more than one job, or traveling huge distances on public transportation to get to jobs that may not pay an adequate wage. The other thing is we have very high homicide rates, and that is huge. I mean, if you see someone on the news who has been killed, or maybe in your block who looks like you, that has an impact on you emotionally. It's like, that could have been me. And we are also seeing a lot more families that are experiencing multiple deaths, right? Especially from the opioid crisis that we have here in the city and in the region, the homicides, and now COVID on top of everything else, on top of all the car accidents and other types of deaths. So it's a lot that they're dealing with. And it is a city that has old infrastructure. We have not realistically recovered from the closing of manufacturing plants in the 1950s and 60s. You can still see derelict buildings with windows busted out, and the structure is still there, and the ghosts of the people who work there, and all around there, a lot of homes that have fallen apart because they were built in the late 1800s, right? All that to say is that we as a people are struggling a lot. I don't know of anybody who's have it easy. And then we also have a school kids. I mean, I'm a product of Philadelphia schools, and I take pride in that. But we also have a lot of children who just don't have those resources, and now we're asking them to stay home and do computer stuff when they didn't have that training. So it's a lot we're asking of the children. It's a lot we're asking of families. And I am excited about talking about what we can do together to support families in Philadelphia and the region.
Thank you, Teresa. I'm going to invite folks to breathe for a second. I think one of the disadvantages of being the moderator is I'm trying to hang on every word because every word is really motivating for me. So I found myself not breathing. So I'm going to breathe for a second, and then we're going to move on to the next question. I want the participants to pay close attention to the chat. Our professionals are putting up support options for you, and we will eventually invite you to put some things in the Q&A. So we consider our work at Uplift, and I know that our partners do too, to be a strength-based work, because we can talk about challenges and we can talk about difficulties, but one of the things that is exciting about working in this city is being able to mine the unique strengths, abilities, cultural attributes and strategies that children and families have of their own, and they bring to the work. So I want to invite the panel again to narrow in or broaden some of those things that you've seen in these children and families that they actually are using and can use to work through their lifelong grief process. And we can go with Dr. Banks first again.
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind is just creativity. Like what I have seen our families come up with during all of this time, and I know I'm speaking kind of COVID-esque, but I think before there were the community centers, there were neighborhoods that were pulling out tables and chairs on the block for kids to do the schoolwork together outside, right? Like they were thinking about, like, you have to go to work, all right, I'll help, and so although that's not specifically grief related, it is, because it's like somebody cares. There are people that cares, and people who I didn't know were family actually kind of are family. And so I've seen time and time again, if I even look at the resources and supports that our counselors and staff have come up with, like some creative things that like we couldn't have thought of to try to figure out how to support the students and families. And so I will say our city and our families and our parents just constantly thinking of, if I have to, how, and coming up with another how that somebody hasn't made for them and they've kind of made for themselves.
Thank you. Shantae?
Well, what I'm noticing is the artwork. I have seen young people take art to do a coping thing. I've seen them do art with their music, with their phone, come up with a public service announcement. I've seen the not only the families and the young people come creative. I've seen, like the doctor said, the community become creative. This is probably one time I saw that with me, and I work with a lot of community partners, is that it was determined, they were determined that we will work in this area, no one will go hungry. They created pods for children to come with retired teachers to learn. What I've also seen is that you had outside activity that needed to happen because young people needed to see each other along with the video component of it. And all of those things were very important. And so you got to see community and you got to see families and young people recreate what family life was going to be and embrace it differently. So now you see we in COVID. So what really happens is now you're living at work. You're living at work, you're living at school. And everybody, people might not say it, work and school is normally a good breather for both adults and children, the young people. They glad to get away from each other for a minute. So now you have this here. And you watch the creativity of them still trying to reconnect, even though they're afraid. So if I can recreate a time that I had with my colleague or with my friend from school, even during this time, that's what you're seeing happening. You're seeing some of the great works, especially those who have been through our trauma work, utilizing those skills. But what I also saw, which was very powerful, is that in our groups, those young people that had been through our groups came to help those who is this their first time experiencing a homicide. And so you saw this city of brotherly love and sisterly affection. You saw a glimpse of it happening through younger people, showing this is what life should be. And that's what I saw that was phenomenal for me. Are we in a good place? No, we're not there yet, but we're getting there. Are we healed? No, but we're getting there. Are we still suffering? Yes. But I do believe that you're watching families and you're watching community reach their arm out a little bit different. And that's what I think is very powerful that's happening right now, especially with young adults and their voice. One of the major things would help with young people that we work with is them regaining their voice to express who they are, what they're feeling, and what's right and wrong. You know, young people they don't really have a voice at times. And so when you watch all this happening and you watch the skill set and you watch all this great work happening and interaction, it brings you joy. And I think that if we pull on that and you do that much more, then we can get through this next wave. Because this next wave right now, no, I don't want to do this right now. I don't. I don't want to do this. But I know that if I stand strong and do all that I have, and people do all the great things that they learn and do, that we will come out winning. We going to win. It's just, this is just the hard piece.
Thank you. Crystal.
We're getting there. Thank you so much for that, Shantae. When youth and caregivers attend group for the first time, I believe just knowing that they are not alone kind of releases some of the weight that they're carrying and some of the weight that they are experiencing. Having someone validate their feelings, their thoughts, the physical reactions that they've been experiencing is also helpful. Coping strategies that's offered by someone who gets it, someone who's going through a similar experience, and not just someone reading something from a textbook or an article that they believe will be, a good method for them. Acknowledging that you can't do it all alone. You don't have to do it alone. And then asking for help. And I see a lot of families, they're redefining what being strong is and what it looks like, because for so long they've been trying to live up to others' expectations. But I see them now taking the time to define it for themselves. Being strong may be doing what I need to do. Being strong may be making it from day to day or from moment to moment. And then recognizing that there may be times when I'll use my energy and my abilities to make it happen, but there are also times when I'll use my energy to find, what it is that I'm in need of, or who it is that I am in need of, to navigate the system, to make that phone call or send that email. So knowing if there is something I could do, and if I am able to do it, asking myself, is it something that I should do? That's what I see the families doing now.
Thank you, Crystal. Teresa?
Yeah, so I use the word determination. Some people call it moxie, grit, and it's encapsulated in the word yo, right? We Philadelphians say yo a lot. And so that basically means really about the determination of getting to our groups. They reach out and they know what they're looking for and they want and they trust. But they get to our groups when we were in person. They would come on bus. They would come on Lyft or Uber. They would come through snow and sleet and rain, even hot, humid days, and they made it happen because those caregivers, whether they were parents or grandparents or aunts, uncles, cousins, even neighbors, they wanted the best for that child. And they knew that child needed support and that they needed support. And they came and they shared and they opened up and they embraced each other in the groups. And they're still doing that now. I can't tell you how many times when they come to group now by Zoom and they reach out across those little boxes and they'll call each other by name. Oh, just like Miss Margaret, that's how I feel too. And they reach out and they really are looking for connections. And it goes through all kinds of backgrounds, cultures, religions, races, and there really are. They have such incredible strength and resilience. And yes, they will take those moments to have their times when they can't get up, but boy, do they get up every single day for their child and make it work. And I am always in awe of everything that they're doing during this grief process, during a really challenging time in our history.
Thank you, Teresa. For our audience, I want you to lean into these last 4 responses, because oftentimes when we're talking about our children and families in Philadelphia, we're talking about what they're not rather than who they are and who they want to be. We often get into our stereotypes, even though we're in this work. we get into a stunted lens and start to see young people as people who need to be fixed or there's something wrong with them. Let it sink in what the panel has told you about what these children and families are doing and can do, because that's the place where the healing and the change comes, is what they can do and what they're already doing. One of my biggest speeches about coming to Philly is folk really don't lean into what people are already doing, because I know a lot of you have been on calls and somebody says, nothing's happening, nobody's doing anything. And it couldn't be further from the truth, because even if I'm not doing this job, there's a caregiver and a child out there who's getting up and going to school and fighting through whatever it is that they're dealing with and holding a job and et cetera. So we're going to go to the next question. We're getting close to 7. So we're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to give our panelists an opportunity to highlight some unique things and programming and approaches that you're doing in your system to support grieving children in the city. I know that, Dr. Banks is our Hope Line representative. So I want to ask her to name that and all the other things that people on the call might not know that the school system is doing to support our children and families.
Of course, the Hope Line is my fave, right? But we have been trying with the school district to, again, identify and support students and families as much as possible, knowing that virtual, like when we were in person, even if someone didn't tell you something was wrong, you were able to sense it, you were able to pick it up, and you were able to then, whomever had a relationship with that child would then nudge and prod and finally kind of try to help them, right? And so we've been trying to help all of our staff understand kind of all the different types of signs that you would see virtually, to try to not miss any students that might need more support. And then we've been, of course, training our counselors and our social workers to continue to support and how to support virtually. And then, we definitely have had, especially with the number, and I know it's a question later, regarding the number of, homicides and everything that we get. My team also handles all the crisis response. And so at schools, what we're finding now more than ever is that when one of the shootings happens in our city, I'm finding siblings, a lot of siblings, and we're trying to then get to those siblings. And so we're reaching out to, of course, our partners at Uplift and our other partners in the city to help the school communities and the students and families themselves get connected to resources. So we're doing a lot of different things, but the goal is to try to reach as many students as possible and acknowledge the different levels of grief, right? And not dismiss any of those levels. And so maybe that just means extra check-ins with the counselor and for that student that gets them through, right? And then if others need more intensive supports, we're trying to make sure to connect. Additionally, this year we have mental health providers connected to each school. And so as those relationships are building, we're also connecting students and families as necessary. So again, we're just trying to be as helpful as possible in a situation that none of us imagined or prepared to be in.
Thank you. And we can probably save this for a little towards the end. If there's any particular website that you want to direct people to, maybe you can type it in the chat before we finish, or you can get it to us and we can disseminate it with the follow-up.
Right. I forgot one thing. Well, I didn't talk about the Hope Line, but I don't know if you want me to do that.
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead. Please do that.
But I'll talk about that next. But the other thing is that because of all that has gone on this school year, and I'm not even sure why I didn't even lead with this, we wanted to start this school year with Healing Together. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and not that it's just one thing we do at one point in time. This is how we need to move forward, period. COVID, non-COVID, right? We need to move forward in supporting our students, where we're building relationships in community, where we're focusing on mental health and trauma, where we're social emotional learning isn't this thing that happens on the side. It's something that's integrated in all academic work and classrooms. And that we're looking at adult wellness. We need our adults to take care of our kids, but if we aren't making sure they take care of themselves, then how can they take care of our kids? And so that programming, that support is being pushed out all year long. And my goal is that it continue. For the first time in school district history, we have community meetings happening throughout the school district, throughout the grade bands. It might look different depending the age span, but again, it's a time to connect. And hopefully, if a student does need more support, again, they're identified through that. And then last but not least, which I didn't say, is the Hope Line. The Hope Line is such, I can talk about it for days and it makes me smile, but we came together, the district with Uplift, and I had a crazy idea and they were able to make it happen. But with that, it's just support for our students and families to get the resources and help that they need. And it's just amazing that not only will they provide counseling help, but if there's resources or they don't know how to get through a laptop, they will figure out, Jamie, what number is needed to connect this family, and we make it happen. And I think if anything has come out of COVID, it's just the importance of partnerships and working together. And I can talk for days and I will stop because I know it's time and everyone else has to talk, but it's one of my favorite things.
Awesome. Thank you. Shantae.
Dr. Banks, we can tell you really like that Hope Line. You should have seen how you lit up. You were talking about that.
I love it.
Well, congratulations on it. I'm glad that you're able to talk about it. I will tell you at EMIR Healing Center, we serve families that's been impacted by homicide. And so what's the great thing about the work we do is that we do it now virtually. So you will see us doing our wellness component is where we look at the entire family. We've always worked with the whole family because we understand that the pain and the grief impacts everyone. And when they say family, that's who they decide family is. And sometimes it is my mom down the street who's part of the family. And then we're able to not only offer them counseling, but our support services is a little bit different. We do our alternative wellness, which you'll see young people are coming to do meditation or yoga or what we call strong, which is a really very physical activity to take them through. The power of paint is that healing through artwork, and which is phenomenal for young people, and also our healing through storytelling, which is allow them to create their own story. And how do you walk through that? And the good thing is that when you're doing with this alternative way, it allows you to kind of open it up and be a little bit different, and the counselors get to help them create the direction they go in. And so I'm very fortunate to have a awesome team of counselors that are very creative. In order to do this type of work, you kind of sometimes have to be different, and you still have the concrete skills to learn how to heal and the practical skills of learning how to move forward and your triggers and all those things. But can I teach you through nutrition and through cooking? Can I have you in a cooking class? And if that's the one thing that made you stronger and take you through a trauma place of healing, then we normally do it. And we find that the different cultures and our subcultures is those things are the ones that make them strong. And so being flexible to put that in your model is important. And so what happens, how people operate in South Philly is sometimes a little bit different than how people and neighbors operate in Germantown. And I tell people all the time, like Crystal said, Philadelphia is a neighborhood of neighbors. It's a city of neighborhoods. It's also a city of cultures and subcultures. And so at EMIR Healing Center, we have to have the ability to be flexible We also do our crisis response, which we send out a team that work with not only individual families, but that block, and that block to give them some methods of how to still be together, and how do they heal, and how do they, especially for parents, how do you recognize what trauma looks like and what grief looks like? What does it look like? And it sometimes is not just, you need to get over it type of thing. And all those things is that I think that we're very fortunate to offer in Philadelphia. And I think that it's a great thing for us. And it's great for the people we serve, because we're very busy. I will tell you, this is the one time when COVID happened, I really didn't calculate, and some of you might be able to share that. I didn't calculate the level of need that was going to happen. And so we wound up having to bring on 4 new people and having a group of some sorts running 6 days a week. The only day that we weren't was Sundays. But to have 2 and 3 types of sessions and different sessions each day and have something different. And even for our young brothers, our When Brothers Speak group, that's made for them and how they work through their grief and their healing process. And I think that's a little bit about it in a nutshell.
Thank you.
That makes me smile too.
Okay, thank you. Crystal.
Yes. So I read recently something that Mr. Fred Rogers' mother said to him, and she told him to look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping. And then my mind went back to what Ms. Simmons said in the video, that parenting through grief is one of the hardest things in the world. So instead of trying to tackle that on their own, the families and the caregivers are able to utilize the grief groups just to help them carry the load. Even if it's just for 1 hour a week, allowing others to support them in their grief journey can be exactly what they need to make it through that next hour, that next day, week, month, and eventually that next year. So at Uplift Center for Grieving Children, virtual weekly grief groups are offered later in the afternoon after school hours through the early evening. We also learned that we had to make our curriculum online friendly with interactive activities, with video clips, because we're not able to provide the materials we did in person. We have to be mindful that everyone may not have, access to art supplies. So making sure that families have a notice, prior notice of things that they may need for a particular activity within a particular group is also something that's very necessary. And then we know that most of the students are online for school. So we do not want groups to feel like an extension to their school day. So we incorporate different rituals to start our groups off. We do non-grief related activities such as icebreakers, just to kind of start the session off, on a different note, and then transition into the theme that we had planned for that evening. We also offer coping strategies to the participants to use both inside and outside of group, because we know that their grief will not end once they hit that leave meeting button on their Zoom. Their grief will not end then. So it's our goal, and I would even say it's our duty, to give families the necessary tools to help them better manage their grief. Then we always end group with a closing ritual. But I found that the virtual platform has really allowed the deceased to be a part of the group, meaning that there may be pictures of them on the wall, on a mantle, on a dresser. There may be linking objects in reach, or right there in the room that the family is utilizing for group. And I've even had different group participants ask if they can show a picture, or can I show something that belonged to my person. So participants, they do this. And this, again, is just allowing the deceased to be a part of the group and to be a part of the healing process. And I'll add that we give space for participants to also process other loss, not just the death, because there has been a lot of changes that are occurring in our worlds and in their worlds. So we give them that space to process that loss. And I'll share the rest for my colleague, Teresa.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Crystal.
Thanks, Crystal. Yeah, we've had to certainly adapt and change. And before I continue, I just want to do a little shout out for the bilingual counseling assistants at the school district, because my goodness, they worked so tirelessly. I found myself trying to support them as they supported the families who had experienced death during COVID. And also a shout out to our volunteers at Uplift and our interns. Some of the former interns are online with us today because they help make the work possible, so that we can't always be the only ones in group. In fact, we need a team, and we work as a team, and that's really important. And that's why partnerships also matter. And I also want to shout out to everybody else at Uplift who is behind the scenes or in groups or covering the Hope line. So thank you to everybody. So it is everybody is playing a role all the time. And one of the things that we've been doing is like listening to the families. The families tell us, the kids tell us what they want and what they need, and we just have to listen a little bit more. So, and we've been doing that. That's why we started providing meals for the families, cooking crock pots to our different sites, give them a little warm meal to take the edge off hunger when we were meeting in person. And we would do a lot of different activities. Now, via Zoom, we changed our entire curriculum so that the activities could be done at home with minimal space. So, you know, if we practice yoga, we encourage the families, you know, if you want to get a little towel, a little rag, and pretend it's a magic carpet. And then they can do, you know, yoga in this little space. Movement and music is more integrated into our groups, and materials that they may have at home. We learned very quickly that even though we know it up here, seeing it online was a whole different matter. Little younger children are not designed to stay still and to be on Zoom. So now we've condensed our time online with them to 1 hour. We also invite for the younger children who are in kindergarten, first or second grade, to come to our group, but with their caregivers. The caregivers were there anyway, holding up the phone and saying, stay still, or trying to help them answer. So now we integrated them so that they're part of the activities, and we can give them some tips during the activities as well, so that they can carry through. And we give them like little assignments for the families to work on, so that everybody gets involved. We're also offering groups in Spanish. So having that space where, whether it's a caregiver or whether it's children who are new Philadelphians and are English learners, to be able to offer that. So we are constantly adapting and learning and really trying to be responsive to the families. We also, most importantly, will sit in silence with their grief and be there to witness and to help hold that grief. We can't take away that pain, but just to let them know that their tears is not something we're trying to fix, but that we can sit there and we hold this space for them. And that's part of the healing process.
Thank you, Teresa. Just in terms of timing and order here, we're at 7:16, and I'm going to let the panel know that we have 2 questions from the floor, and I'm going to read one, and we can ask some folks to respond, and then I do want to say one thing. We continue to have groups in the schools. Megan Zafran, who's the Director of School and Community Services, is consistently all day long trying to negotiate to recreate those school-based services for the young people, even though they're not in the building. So that absolutely continues. I'm going to go, if the panel is comfortable with this, I'm going to go with the first question from the floor, because we have about 13 minutes. We do have to make a hard stop at 7:30. So what we would ask people to do. If you have questions, put them in the chat. We'll actually have those recorded, and we will try to figure out how to respond if we don't get it in the next 13 minutes. So, question from the floor. And again, I'm looking at my notes because I want to be on point. Question is, what can adults in different settings do to proactively identify and support youth to prevent youth from developing depression and suicidal ideation? And I'll put that question out there, and I'll say this about it. Part of what I think I heard Shantae talking about and Dr. Banks is that there's a wave of emotions and responses to COVID and isolation, and we're going to have to be prepared to deal with that. And part of that process is depression and suicidal ideation. So any thoughts from our panel about what to do proactively to identify and support youth and prevent youth from developing depression and suicidal ideation?
I can go first. I mean,
go ahead, Dr. Banks.
What we have done is, again, proactively pushing out relationships, right? And through relationships, talking about emotions, talking about feelings, and giving that space where the young person can start to share and voice kind of whatever they're thinking and feeling, and hopefully being able to get to it before it rises to something more severe that I think requires, an ER or a crisis visit. We just posted via our social media, we have being pushed out a little flyer for students to say, how to ask for help, and different ways and different questions that they can say, or different statements they can say to a trusted adult, to say, like, I don't know what I'm feeling, but this is what I'm feeling. I don't know what that means. Or little ones can be drawing and just draw what they mean. So trying to help giving them the words or ways to express how they're feeling, so that, again, individuals, adults can be picking up on that. But I'm going to say a lot of it falls in the relationship, and for adults, setting an environment where students, kids, family members can feel comfortable to at least say something that would then alert someone to try to dig further.
Thank you. Anyone else want to respond to
I, I think that Dr. Banks put it, she summed it up, and that is creating safer spaces for people to express. And that, especially as adults, us looking at learning what depression looks like, learning what trauma triggers some of these young people triggers, understanding what trauma is, and as well as not only having a relationship, but also giving them the okay, the safe place to say, it's safe with me. And that, I think that what happens with a lot of young people is that they don't feel as safe as I think that as some adults, we kind of miss some of the mark, making them feel safe. And so in order for that to happen, you have to have not only relationship building, you have to also teach this to the parents. What does it look like? What does trauma looks like from their lens? And what are they actually seeing? But also, how do you say, I need some help? And say it's okay to say, I need some help. And what I'm seeing with a lot of the counselors, and especially my counselors that deal with young people especially, is, like she said, creating those special words, creating those what we call our help, our 5 things of how do you need ask for help, creating that so that they do have that. It's almost like a lifeline. That connection is not broken. And so if you're creating that in your agency and you're creating that at home, then you kind of prevent some of the other things to come because you're on it. And it's not, I'll tell people, when you're going through grief and a lot of the pain, it's almost like us reparenting again. You have to reparent again. You have to love deeper. You have to be more patient, but you got to use all your senses, your eyes, your ears, and to see what it is that's happening, and be okay to say, I need you. I need some help. I need some help.
Thank you, Shantae. And this, Teresa, did you want to respond to that?
Sure, thank you. Connections, right? We, as human beings, we are social beings and we need to feel connected. One of the concerns I have about this shutdown is that we're isolating ourselves even more. And I'm very concerned about the mental health of adults and seniors and, yes, children. When people are in such pain, that's when they feel hopeless. And so how do we create this community, this village mentality that we're all responsible for each other's children, right? And so creating partnership, the Hope Line is something that can be a tool as well, so that the children, when they're feeling alone or depressed or sad, or they're worried about their parent who's lost a job or somebody sick or has died, that they can have that connection. And we need to figure out ways that we can make it a safe place that they define safe, not us. They have to define what safety is for them. I had a teen who told me, and we always complain about our teens, right, who are always on the cell phone. Well, this teen told me that when he walked down certain neighborhoods, he was on his cell phone because it made him feel safe. And it made me rethink cell phones. They're not just about talking to other people. It's about creating safety. So how do we learn from the youth about what helps them remain hopeful, connected, and feeling safe, and then using that to provide the services for them?
Okay. Thank you, Teresa. I think this is a perfect segue. We're not going to get to all the formal questions, but when we thought about this panel, one of the things came to mind is that this is somewhat of a new beginning for us. But one of the things that I want the panelists to react to as we move out and move closer to 7:30 is say one thing that you think we could do to have youth voice in the work. And I'm not talking about showing up for groups, but what's one thing that each of you think that we could do to bring youth voice in the development, implementation, and pressing for funding and advocacy in this work that we're doing. So I'm going to start with Dr. Banks, and we're going to go through, and then we're going to say our goodbyes. And we see that there's some things in the chat that we need to follow up on, and we will follow up on those. Dr. Banks.
This is difficult. I do not have one thing.
Okay.
But I think we need to incorporate them in not just the execution, but the development of support. Their voice needs to be in. So there's a lot of youth groups that are already connected, but I don't necessarily think they always get a seat at the table. And so I think we need to pull them in prior to what we decide what we think is needed, and have them help design that.
Thank you. Shantae?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because it brought me back to our We Live project. And our We Lived project was developed by young people. And you always have to be open for their creativity, because the We Live project basically really was young people said, we need our own place. We need our own platform. And they developed one of the components that they call Scream. And allowing them to have that and the freedom to do it, you have to get to a place where it's youth-led and adult-supported. And that's too important. And if it's youth-led and adult-supported, we all win. They become more empowered. You watch them grow wider, and you learn something more too as we get older. And you have to always be okay with that. And be okay with, guess what? It might not sound right to you. It might seem like, why the heck they want to do that like that? Mark my word. 9 times out of 10, most of the time, it's the exact thing that they need. And if we just add a little bit of stuff and push it forward, then it's become successful. Youth-led, adult-supported. And that's too important.
Thank you. Crystal?
I agree. The answer is simple. Ask them. Ask the youth. Get them involved as the leaders, because if the group is for them, their fingerprint should be on everything from creating the safe space and developing the curriculum to what grief support and healing should look like for youth participants. So I would say consult the experts. And also they need to see buy-in from the adults. In essence, practice what we preach. We can't expect transparency from the youth. We aren't willing to be transparent and vulnerable ourselves.
Thank you, Crystal. Teresa?
I think everyone has said it beautifully, but if we listen, we can really hear what they're saying. And so we need to make use of our 2 ears. And that's why we have 1 mouth, right? So 2 ears, so we can listen twice as much as we speak, and let their words fill our ears.
Thank you, Teresa. I think this is a great place to end, because it looks to development, it looks to the future, and it looks to what we need to do next to make our programs youth-led and adult-supported. With that in mind, I want to thank you all on behalf of our executive director, the staff, the board, volunteers, and everyone connected to us. I believe that we've had a great conversation tonight, and it's going to move us forward in the future. We're going to leave this up for a few seconds, so that if people need to type in questions or concerns, we'll type those in, but the formal presentation will end. I want to invite you to please go to the Speaking Grief website. There are videos, but I want you to navigate through, because they're not just videos, the one documentary, but they're family vignettes that you can use in your work, but also with your own family and with people that you love. Thank you very much. Any information regarding Uplift Center for Grieving Children, you can go to upliftphilly.org, and we want to thank you and have a great evening.